All right, welcome, my friend, once again to another episode, Red Delta Project podcast and live feed Q&A and conversation here on the RDP YouTube channel, where we take a fundamental approach to fitness to give you more power, control, and freedom over your healthy lifestyle. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly, founder of the Red Delta Project and author of the books that sponsor these episodes, like Micro Workouts on How to Get More Done in Less Time, Grind Style Calisthenics, all about helping you build muscle and strength as the most direct way possible through bodyweight training, and of course, my ever popular Overcoming Isometrics. Links to those, as well as the full library of RDP titles, is down below in the description for both PDF, electronic, and physical books. So today's topic, we're discussing common mistakes that I often find that not just beginners, but usually people make these at the beginning of their calisthenics journey, which is kind of relative, really, because there are some people I know who go through the first few months and they're kind of, quote, advanced within a number of months. And then there are other people I know who are still kind of struggling through the beginner stages of their calisthenics career, even years down the line. There's no guarantee that just simply putting in time and having the passage of the days on the calendar make you an expert at anything. As we all know from experts and quote unquote experts in our own field, wherever you work in, I'm sure you know people who it's like, gee, you'd think someone who'd been doing this for 20 years would be smarter about this topic or know better. So that's the kind of the first lesson, is recognizing that just putting in the time and the effort in no way guarantees any sort of degree of results or proficiency, which is the number one mistake that I made when I started. Because I thought incorrectly that, if I just put in the work and I put in the effort and I'm patient, then I'm sure the results will just come eventually, right? I'm sure that the muscle will come and the ability to do things will just happen because I'm putting things in. And this kind of coincides with a lot of that myth within just, I don't know about where you may live, but here in America, we have that very strong Puritan work ethic where you get out what you put in. If you want more success in life, the answer is you do more work and you just put in more effort. And for sure, there is definitely correlation between input and output, but it is loosely correlated. It is most certainly possible and actually quite common for people to put in a lot and wind up getting very little in return. That's certainly the case that's happened for me many times throughout my career. And as a beginner, we want to make sure that we're not just putting an effort blindly or investing of yourself, assuming it's going to pan out. And Ashtonville is here. Thank you very much coming on in. And the thing that we want to make sure that we don't fall into is the idea that we can work our way to success, because that usually doesn't work. There is certainly a correlation between hard work and success, but there's no guarantee of success or even progress through hard work. And that leads me to the next mistake that a lot of beginners make is, I'm going to hit the ground running and I'm just going to work as hard as possible because I'm sure the best way to maximize my results is to invest as much of myself as I can. So I'm going to put in as much effort, as much time, and as much energy into my workouts and my diet and my workout career. So basically, it's kind of like they hit the ground in a dead sprint. They're just like, damn the consequences, and they play the short game where they just go all out thinking, if I put it out a lot of effort and really sprint forward with as much as I can, then that's going to bring me faster results and it's going to be worthwhile in the end. Again, assuming that if I put more in, more is going to come back to me, which isn't always the case. Instead, I know it's hard when you're a beginner, but you want to think the long game. It's kind of hard to conceptualize when you're starting out in anything. When I was younger and I started my martial arts career, I remember I found a block of insulation foam at a construction site. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try and break this piece of foam with a sidekick. And I kept trying to kick it and kick it and kick it, and I never could break it. And I was so frustrated with myself because I was thinking in my mind, what the heck? I've been doing Taekwondo for so long. It was like 7 weeks at that point. But in my mind as a beginner, I was like, so long, I should be able to break this sturdy piece of insulation foam. Because when you're a beginner, a few weeks, a few months feels like a long time. But of course, now in hindsight, I've been doing Taekwondo for 33 years now. I'm like, 6 weeks, dude, you're barely even getting started. You've learned how to tie your belt. That was about it at that point. And it's the same thing in calisthenics training, fitness in general. We tend to overestimate what we can do in the short term. It's been 6 weeks. How come I'm not jacked? It's been 6 weeks, 6 months, a few weeks, whatever. How come my body isn't changing the way I think? And it's just because of our perspective is a little off. We don't have enough experience to recognize that what we think is a long period of time isn't really that much time in the long run. But we're not playing the long run. We're not playing the long game. That's why I always tell people, give yourself the 3 to 5 test. So whenever you're doing a new set of workouts or diet or anything like that, ask yourself if you can reasonably do it for 3 to 5 days. Next 3 to 5 days. After 3 to 5 days, can you do it relatively easily for 3 to 5 weeks? After 3 to 5 weeks, can you do it for the next 3 to 5 months? Sorry, my light is going here. I've got a dead bulb, I think. And after 3 to 5 months, can you do it for the next 3 to 5 years? Now, the answer at each one of those intervals should be, yeah, definitely. This is not that hard to stick to. This is pretty easy to maintain. I can keep on moving forward. If the answer is, well, I'm sure if I really put my mind to it and I really use my willpower and discipline, then I'm sure I can probably, no, that's not a recipe for success. Instead, we don't want to be maximizing our output and effort. I'm just not even gonna, there we go. Instead, we want to try to use a more moderate approach, which I know isn't sexy when you're starting out. When you're starting out, you want results fast. You want to feel like you're really giving a lot. It doesn't feel good to feel like you're holding back a little bit at the beginning of a race. I could be going faster. I could be doing things, but we want to play the long game because otherwise we're going to burn out. Chance of injury goes up. Chance of other types of stressors to mind, body, and lifestyle increase. And those all compromise your ability to continue making progress over the subsequent months, weeks, and years. So if you think of like, I'm going to go 100%, back it down just a little bit, 80%, 75%. Remember that when we are investing of ourselves in anything in life, work or training and stuff like that, you can't maintain 100%. It's just impossible. In order to have that longevity, to achieve and maintain your results, you're gonna have to drive below your maximum. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't ever go to your maximum. Yes, absolutely. When I'm doing a mountain bike race, there are certainly times when I'm sprinting my full speed. When I am doing work on my books and stuff, there are times when I will invest 100% of my effort to get the book done on a deadline or to finish a chapter or something like that. However, I recognize that that level of effort that I'm putting in is temporary. Like I'm only going to go at this level of intensity and effort because it's only going to be for a few days or for a few minutes or whatever. I'm planning on scaling back because I can't keep that going. So we want that mentality that you're not going to be able to go and maintain 100% all the time. You want to keep that potential in reserves for when it's most beneficial for you and most conducive. Leo's on. How's it going? Yeah, Leo is saying, yes, 100% avoiding the burnout. That's one of the biggest reasons why people fail to get what they want is the burnout will just drive you into the ground because chances are you're going to burn out a lot faster than you will see the results. And the next mistake that a lot of people make is thinking, like I was kind of touching on earlier, of achieving more in a shorter period of time than what you think. So again, it's kind of a perspective of I've been doing it 6 weeks. Shouldn't I be further along? I've been doing it several months or 6 months. Shouldn't I be further along? The reality is a lot of our goals that we really want, that we think we can achieve in a number of months are probably several years down the line. It's not something that's going to happen quite that quickly. And a lot of times we don't measure up to those expectations and we think, what am I doing wrong? What is wrong with my program or my workouts and stuff that I haven't achieved this goal in 6 months or whatever? And the answer is probably you're not doing anything wrong. It's just the timeline's a little bit skewed, and you think I'll get a 1-arm push-up in 6 months, and you're still struggling to do 2 sets of 20 strict, nice, close push-ups. And that leads into another mistake, is thinking that there's a regular time frame for when people should achieve a certain objective. And you hear this sometimes with perspective of like, oh, how much weight should you lose each week? How much should you put on the bar every week and things like that, as if progression and advancement is linear and predictable. But in real life, it just simply isn't. Sometimes people will achieve something like a pistol squat within a matter of days. And they're like, dude, I got that in a week. Great. And there are some people out there who it'll take years to accomplish that goal. And people ask me sometimes, like, when will I be able to do a front lever or this result and stuff? And the answer I give them is always, you get there when you get there, man. Like, there's no regular speed and pace, because we're all starting off at different places along this spectrum. That's why I always tell people, I don't train you according to your age or your gender or your height, and you're fat and you're skinny. People ask all the time, if I've got these conditions, how should I adjust my workouts? And the answer is, I typically don't care about those conditions. I always train people according to their capacity, their capability. If you're someone who can bang out 1-arm push-ups, I'm going to train you as someone who can bang out 1-arm push-ups. I don't care if you're 90 or 9. I don't care if you're tall or fat or skinny or rich or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm going to train you according to your ability. Instead, if the mistake we would make is like, well, I'm 19. Shouldn't I be able to do X, Y, and Z? It's like, I know 19-year-olds who struggle to get into a deep squat and do one decent push-up. I know guys in their 70s who are riding circles around me on their mountain bike. The circumstances or the conditions on one person to the next we think are determining our fate are certainly an influence, but they're not really that much in control. So that's why, as beginners, we often fall into the next mistake, which is, I'm a beginner, therefore I should be doing this kind of exercise or this kind of workout routine or doing push-ups or rows or whatever this particular way. And that's a big mistake that people make, is assuming, well, if I'm a beginner, then I should be doing this and that, right? Instead, train according to your capabilities. You pick up combat conditioning and you find that you're pretty proficient, you can do an exercise up to level 7, then train up to level 7. You know, Paul Wade talks about holding back, but people wildly misunderstand that advice, because what he's saying is make sure you can really master the introductory steps and build up. Don't just jump in and think that you're at that level, when in reality, your technique is pretty poor at a higher level. You think you're at a higher level, but you really aren't. Instead, you want to be very prudent with your techniques and be milking as much as you can out of every single step there. So it's the same thing, is if you are more advanced, then train as someone who's more advanced. But if you're someone who struggles to get into a deep squat, train as someone who gets into a deep squat. I don't care if you've been working out for 10 years or 10 minutes. That's how you adjust things according to your abilities. Let's jump right into a couple of comments here. We got some folks coming on right here. Dave is coming on right away, and he says, black belt just means you know enough not to hurt yourself, right? Absolutely, Dave. So I became a black belt at the age of 17, I think, 16 or 17. And yeah, I mean, at the time I thought I was, oh, I'm hot stuff. Like, I got my black belt and stuff. And now I look back, I'm like, you barely scratched the surface. My instructor always told us, is like, getting to be a black belt is like graduating and getting into high school, or barely starting your college years. You know, at the time it feels like you've come a long way, but when you look back on it on a more lengthy career with more experience, you realize you really didn't know as much as you thought you did. And that's not just the beginner's mindset, it's just the simple reality of it, is we think we're more advanced than we typically are, especially when we're beginners. And the ironic thing is, the more advanced you become, the more you realize you don't know. The more you realize that you are just barely scratching the surface. So same thing with calisthenics, same thing with martial arts. Like, hell, I'm very happy that I'm making progress finally in the stability of my side kick. A kick I learned when I was 10 years old, right? I was 10 years old when I learned that kick. Now I'm 43 and I'm like, I think I'm starting to get the hang of this thing. Like, I'm starting to finally feel like I kind of know what I'm doing with this side kick. So that's the mark of someone who is more advanced and experienced, someone who thinks, a beginner is, I've been training for a year, that's a lot, right? And someone who's more advanced is like, I've been training for 40 years, I'm off to a good start, kind of thing. Let's ask some more questions. S. Lee coming on. Hey, my body only gets muscle pump when I do push-ups and pull-ups every day with high reps. Only this seems to work. What can I do to gain muscle? Because my joints gets injured very fast because of high reps. Yeah, so the rep thing, or the muscle pump thing, is way overrated. Like, yeah, it's a good thing, it's fine, but it's one of those things that we typically, again, as beginners, correlate with success more than it really is. All right, there are tons of times that I've had success in growing up muscles, like particularly my calves, never had a pump whatsoever, right? And other times you can have a pump every single day. So think of it kind of like those blood pressure cuffs you put on your arm, right? You pump it up and you're like, oh, there's pressure. And then you release the pressure, and then you lose some of that pressure, and it feels a little bit looser and stuff. Same thing going on with your muscles. And yeah, if you abstain from exercise for several days, it's going to feel like your muscles are a little stronger. I was sick for the past couple of weeks, really nasty cold going on around here in Denver, no physical activity whatsoever. And I didn't really put out much as far as videos because my voice was completely shot to hell. But what I did put out, people were like, Matt, you look smaller. You look small, like, or what's wrong? Like, why should I take muscle building advice from this guy, kind of thing? It's like, yeah, I haven't worked out for like 10 days. Of course you're going to look smaller. It's the old adage of once you get your first pump, you're going to feel small for the rest of your life, because it's a small, fleeting time. And we all love the pump. We all love to experience it, but it's like fake mirrors. It's like nature's Photoshop, in other words. But that doesn't mean you need to avoid it. Instead, we want to make sure that we're building muscle through increasing the work capacity of the muscle, which means two things: time and tension. You need to train your muscles to get very strong, which is how much tension there is, and be able to work for a good amount of time. Now, the pump work is more associated with time than tension. You can work really hard tension-wise, doing singles and doubles and triples and stuff, but you're not going to get a whole lot of a pump from that. Some, but not a whole lot. But that's the stuff that's very well associated with building up that strength. And then time, higher rep stuff, more pump, endurance and stuff. And when it comes to building muscle, as far as we understand it, it's the combination of the two. We want approaches that mix the two. That's why grind style calisthenics uses both high repetition, lower weight, relatively speaking, as well as super, super heavy, hard ass stuff that you're doing for like 5-6 reps at the very most. We want both, because no matter what one you're emphasizing, if you don't have the other, you're going to be losing and missing out. Let's see what else we've got here coming on as well. But continuing along with mistakes, Matthew Love coming on. I've been working out for a while, but I think I still do a lot of ego lifting. I'm doing calisthenics, so it'd be something different. I feel like a total idiot. What do I do about that? That's awesome, Matt. Thank you very much for asking that. So here's the thing: is ego is supposed to be part of your workouts. Your ego is a very strong driving force for pushing your body and getting better shape and everything like that. It's very good. You're supposed to ego lift. You should be ego lifting. It's using it in a productive way that we want to do versus a non-productive way. And one of the ways that we beginners, and even more advanced people often do, is we get fixated on a particular aspect of our workouts that we believe is more meaningful than it really is. So the muscle pump I just talked about is one such example. Another one in calisthenics that's very common is rep chasing. I could do 1,000 push-ups. I could do 20 million crunches. I do this much work. I do that much work. Who cares how much work you're doing? There's always going to be someone out there who's getting twice the results with a fraction of the amount of work you're doing. Don't hang your hat on how hard you're working. Doesn't really mean as much as we think it is. It's about productivity, not how hard you're working. So refer to, you can look this up online. There's something called Goodhart's Law. And Goodhart's Law refers to the fact that when a quantifiable metric becomes the target, it ceases to become a good quantifiable metric of progress. So for example, repetitions. How many push-ups can you do? That's an aspect of your proficiency and progress. But it's certainly not the whole picture. But once you make that your goal of how many push-ups can I do, I have a goal of 1,000 push-ups or whatever, you start compromising the other areas that are also associated with progression. And as a result, you're compromising several things to maximize that one thing. And because your attention is on that one thing, you think, oh, that number's going up. That means I'm getting stronger and all these other sorts of things. But you're actually taking 5 steps backwards for 1 step forward in this other way. So this is why, as beginners, we want to have our attention spread out to multiple variables of progression. Great. Repetitions are awesome. Good. So is your range of motion. So is your intensity. So is your speed. So is your frequency. So is your technique, your body position, 100 other things that you should be looking at. Keep in mind, you're fixated on your work capacity. Yes, repetitions are correlated to that. It's an influence to work capacity, but it is by no means the entire picture. There was a news segment years ago that I stayed at work because I want to see this. This guy was going to break the world record for number of push-ups done on his fingertips in 1 minute. And I was like staying at work. I'm like, I got to see this. This is really cool. And this guy got down and finally, after all this lead up and stuff, because the news, wants to keep your attention, he was on the ground. And I'm not joking. His push-ups were like this. Like 3 inches range of motion, if that. And I threw down, I was carrying a clipboard at the time. I threw down a clipboard. I was like, son of a bitch, that's not a damn push-up. And they were like, hey, you got 200 push-ups in a minute. I'm like, oh my God, that was a common example. So when we lift with our ego, we want to spread our ego across many variables, not just get hung up on one thing. Because if you're compromising several things to bolster up that one thing, you're not making as much progress as you think, maybe even going backwards. So Reggie 1408 is asking a very good question that I wish I knew more when I was a beginner, because I made the mistake when I was a beginner of doing way too much work and not having enough rest days. He's asking, what do you recommend doing on active rest days? And I'm a big fan of active rest days because we usually have this attitude in our fitness culture of pedal to the metal and then complete sloth the next day, which is another mistake I used to make. Like I would crush myself with my workouts all day, one day, and then basically not get off the couch the next day. But our body's made to be moving and active every single day. So the thing is, we are built to be active. We are built to be physically moving and mobile and stuff every single day. This idea of be active and then don't do anything for a day, that's a very modern day artificial concept. Because back in the day, if you wanted to do anything in life, it took physical activity. You want to eat, you got to be physically active. You want to socialize, you got to be physically active. You want to travel anywhere, you want to go and do anything, fix something, it took physical activity. So now, thanks to our modern conventions, we don't need that much physical activity, if any, to do all of that stuff. So sloth and being sedentary is something that we now have access to, but that's not what we want to do. We still want to be active every single day. So be active any way that you like. Do anything that you like. It doesn't have to be anything particular, but pay attention to just fatigue and stress. The big mistake, again, a lot of mistake, maybe more of an intermediate mistake that people make is they're like, I'm going to do an intermediate or like an active recovery day. And what they do is still a full-on workout. Like I would do a hard leg day one day and they're like, okay, active recovery. I'm going to go hike up Mount Mansfield. And that's like going uphill for a solid hour and a half and then running down it. You're doing eccentric jump squats for over an hour going down that mountain. It's like, that's not active recovery. So things that require less stress. So stretching, walking, moving the body through easy versions of the exercises you already did. Again, this isn't necessarily something you have to do. I mean, you're going to recover no matter what. You don't need to be active to recover. Recovery happens on its own. But being just loose and moving, especially if something's stiff and sore, just moving it however you can will probably fit the bill. Asking, so basically don't hyper-focus. Yeah, that's probably a good way to look at it for sure. As far as just be active, have some fun, go out and be playful with what you're doing. Ravi is asking here, hey Matt, hit a plateau with pull-ups. I think it's because of my weaker left arm, not sure how to work on it. With push-ups, it's easier to scale one-arm exercises. Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, this is, again, another mistake that a lot of people make when they're beginning calisthenics, is they get fixated on doing an exercise a particular way. This is what I call the calisthenics rut, where you do your pull-ups one particular way, or you work your back and biceps one particular exercise. But we want to have more of a broad approach where it's like anything where you're pulling your hands closer to your chest is a pull exercise. And you've got lots of variations. So for that, what you may want to do is just play around with more rows. Rows are pull-ups, folks. The rowing motion is a progression in the pull-up realm in combat conditioning, because you're fundamentally still doing the exact same thing. You're still flexing your elbow, you're extending at your shoulder, you're just changing a little bit of your body position and your range of motion at those joints. But fundamentally, you're doing the same thing as a pull-up. So if you find, like you were saying, it's a little easier to work on one-arm stuff with push-ups because it's more of a horizontal thing, you're working with a fraction of your body weight, do the exact same strategy with rows. Do the exact archer rows kind of things, single arm rows. I did that earlier from my workout over there on the Bodyweight Master. You employ things like that to help balance things out. Also, don't forget jackknife pull-ups. A lot of people, in all honesty, should be doing jackknife pull-ups, not full-on body weight pull-ups, maybe for the lower stuff. So for example, if you're like, okay, I'm getting like 3 full-on pull-ups, body weight pull-ups, I'm like, great, good, but why are you not doing more jackknife pull-ups? That's not a lesser exercise. It's not a wimpy exercise. Again, we get our ego and attachment to certain exercises. Like, this is how you're supposed to do a pull-up. And we're not exploring more advanced versions or more regressed versions of it. I had the same thing happen when I first got into strength training with classic weight stuff. For whatever reason, I became very fixated on 135, the barbell with a 45-pound plate on each end. So almost every exercise I did was 135, squats 135, deadlift 135, bench press 135, overhead press 135. Like, that was just what I always did because I got fixated on that's what I was supposed to do. And in all honesty, I probably should have been doing the presses with less than 135, the deadlift with more than 135, and so on. So be very well versed in progressive calisthenics theory and make liberal use of a lot more of a range of calisthenics techniques to adjust the intensity of those exercises. Helmut asking here, where and how should I start when I can't do one push-up or pull-up? Which program? So again, this is the next mistake is just not being well versed in progressive calisthenics theory. So it's not about the exercise. You don't get stronger because of the exercise you do. The exercise doesn't do anything for you. The exercise is just a vehicle. It's like me saying I know how to get to work because I've got, the color car I drive, right? The exercise is not the important thing. The important thing is the fundamental movement pattern, push, pull, squat sort of thing, to what degree of difficulty. So when we understand progressive calisthenics theory, we can take those basic movement patterns from ridiculously easy all the way up to, oh my gosh, Captain America could probably not even do that, and everywhere in between. And there's a lot of resources you can use for that. Of course, there's Convict Conditioning, which is one of the most tried and trusted ones. There's my book, Smart Bodyweight Training, as well as Grind Style Calisthenics, which is a simplified version of that. I will be putting out a book later on basic progressive calisthenics that don't require any equipment at all. That's down the list. But getting these books and understanding that progressive calisthenics theory is crucially important as a beginner. And unfortunately, most beginners don't understand it, which is why it's kind of like going into the gym again and saying 135, that's the only weight you can lift. It doesn't matter what the exercise is. That's the only weight you're allowed to lift. And it's like, of course, you're going to be limited. But when you understand how to progress those push-ups, you can do them on a counter. You can do them on back of a couch, having a different angle to the body, different body position and stuff. It's not that complicated. And of course, my upcoming book on progressive calisthenics is going to make it way simpler. But understanding those tools will give you the ability to perfectly adjust those exercises specifically for your level of fitness. Let's see, what else do we have on here on tap? BKS Gaming Favorite method to increase number of body weight pull-ups if I can only do 5 or so. So the favorite method, and again, this is the rep chasing thing. Like I want to do more reps, I want to do more weight and so forth. It's not a bad thing to make those things a goal, but you don't get stronger because you increase reps. You're not going to build muscle because you increase reps. Instead, you increase reps because you get stronger. Don't put the cart before the horse. You get stronger first, then the reps come. You get stronger first, then the muscle and all those other things come. So we want to do the reps you already can do in a stronger way. You can't do more than 5 reps or 6 reps or 10 reps or whatever because the 5 or 6 or 10 aren't good enough yet. Okay, now the analogy I always use, and maybe this is probably showing my age a little bit, is back in the 8-bit Nintendo days, right? When you had the Nintendo Entertainment System, the games that you played didn't have usually like save features and stuff. So every time you played the game, you started at level 1 and you worked your way through level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you just went as far as you could with the lives you had and the health meters and bullets and whatever resources you had until you ran out and then you stopped. And how you got more advanced in the game was you got better at the first level and the second level and the third level. So it's like, I can't get past level 5. What can I do? It's like you get better at level 1. So at the end of level 1, instead of having 4 lives left, you have 6 lives left. And then at the end of level 2, you have more ammunition left over and so on. You do more advanced stuff by getting better at the beginner stuff. It's the same thing. So take those exercise, those reps that you can do, maximize your range of motion, maximize your power. A good little thing that you can do is coming down, and instead of pulling up with whatever speed you have, try to pull a little bit harder. Not trying to be so much explosive or anything like that, but just put a little bit more spice into it so your muscles have to work that much harder. And that's going to make you just a little bit stronger, and therefore that capability spills over. And then you get 6 reps, 7 reps, 8 reps. We don't get stronger because we do more reps. We do more reps because we get stronger. God, I wish I knew that back in the day. Rep chasing really kind of screwed me over for quite a while. Rafa coming on asking, hey Matt, really enjoying GSC. Thank you very much. Want to get my son to join me once he's old enough. Any key consideration when training kids? Basically make it playful. The biggest thing I think that we make as adults when trying to influence others around us, and this is beginners in general, is we try to take it too seriously. We try to do it like so serious, like this is so serious. I got to have the best program. I got to have the best, sort of thing. And one of the reasons why we make this mistake is we're trying to perfect things. We're trying to do it perfectly right. And we're trying to perfect. Here's the thing though. When you're a beginner, your body and your cells are like the most fertile ground for adaptation. Almost anything you do is going to work. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. It is so easy to create some sort of a stimulus for further adaptation. I was working with a new client this morning, actually in her home gym, and she was always like hesitant, like, oh God, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm ready for this workout and anything like that. And I took her through this workout. It was like 20 minutes, push, pull, squat, little bit of plank stuff and extension, no big deal. I was like, okay, that's it. And she's like, that was it? I was like, yeah, that's good. We're done. And she's like, but that wasn't really that much. I'm like, it only had to be better than what you were doing before. And what were you doing before? She was like, nothing. I'm like, great, we win. Like, it's so easy when you're starting off to just move the needle forward a little bit. So we get so hung up on what's the right way? What's the perfect workout? How am I anything? As long as you don't screw it up and do things that are stupid and going to cause injury, right? And that's pretty self-evident. Like, I wonder if I can do these pull-ups while having a rabid Rottweiler trying to nip at my heels or something. I don't really know. But the bottom line is stupid stuff is usually pretty self-evident. And all we need to do is just something. And more importantly, be open and flexible to change and playfulness too. Right? It's like, okay, today we're going to do rows. Okay, tomorrow we're going to do jackknife pull-ups. Okay, today we're going to do higher rep, lower rep. We're going to go faster. We're going to slower. Literally do anything. Have fun. Experiment. I wish I did that more when I was younger because I was so locked in. I was so fixated on getting the perfect program, as if I was looking for something I was going to marry. Like, I've got to find the program that's going to be perfect for me, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Again, think of when you were younger. When I was 17, I was so sure of who I was and what I was going to do with my life and the path I set in my college education and the career I had. 6 years later, it was nothing like that. Right? It's the same thing in your workouts. Whatever you're doing in your workouts and your approach to health and fitness now is probably going to be completely different than what it's going to be 5 years from now, if you're still on the path, which hopefully you are. So as kids, be playful, have fun, experiment. You could come together, for a workout and be like, all right, push-up contest. Who can do the most push-ups in 5 minutes? Go, and just bang them out. Like, was that optimal? Was that more reps or anything? Who cares? Your son or daughter, they're getting down there and they're having fun and they're talking trash like, I could do more push-ups than you. That's literally the only thing we need to concern ourselves with when we're beginning, especially when we are younger along this journey. Thank you very much for that one. That was awesome. Daniel, hey, Matt, if someone wants to just build muscle and doesn't care about strength and performance, how would you recommend to train? Loving your videos for many years now. Thank you very much, Daniel. I appreciate that. Well, strength and performance are still associated with muscle. Remember that we can't directly create an aesthetic stimulus for the body. When we are training, we create a functional demand on the body. No matter what exercise you do, I mean, me picking up this can of seltzer water is literally, I'm telling my body, you need to be able to lift your hand like this, okay? If I'm rolling my wrists like this, I'm literally telling my body right now, you need to be able to perform this functional ability. That's what all training is. There's no such thing as, hey, bicep, get bigger. Those instructions simply do not exist. Now, they may exist as a consequence, like an afterthought echo, but if I'm doing bicep curls, I'm not telling my biceps to get bigger. I'm saying be able to pick up the weight using primarily just your elbow flexion for this many sets and reps. So performance is always supposed to be important to some degree. And we're not, in all honesty, we're not entirely sure what exactly tells the body to build more muscle. Every time we try to isolate something like hormone, testosterone acute increases, or getting stronger and stuff, there's always instances where it doesn't necessarily translate into building muscle. So right now, the best course of action that we can use is try to perform better. We work our muscles by working their work capacity. Now, when it comes to building muscle, though, right now, as we understand it, it's more closely associated with overall work capacity of the muscle. So both strength and endurance. We want both. That's grind style calisthenics. I've designed that program to make sure you're emphasizing both. You're not going with one or the other. Because it's really weird. Like, there are plenty of people out there who get plenty stronger, and they don't gain an ounce. And there are other people who are like reps, and they don't get anything, right? They look exactly the same. But at the same time, their best buddy's like, dude, I got stronger and got huge and jacked. I'm like, what the heck? And this other guy's like, I do 300 million gazillion reps every single day, like Herschel Walker. Everybody talks about Herschel Walker. And I got huge and jacked. And it's like, what the heck? Like, there's not a lot of reliable, like, do this, get jacked kind of information. That's why we want to make sure we cover as many of the bases as possible. You should be concerned with strength. Get stronger. You should be concerned with endurance. Build that endurance and that work capacity. Do both, and do the exercises to the very best of your ability to make sure that muscle is working as hard as possible. All right. Leo says, but the stupid stuff isn't only dangerous, it's usually lots of fun. To a degree, yeah, absolutely. As I always said, as a mountain biker, the more stupid the trail is, the more fun it is. But, the stuff that it's not adrenaline junkies. It's more a flow state, the ability to get the mind and your emotional state focused into what you're doing is usually the stuff that is most important when it comes to getting the most fun. All right, more questions here. If someone is overweight, should they first decrease weight and then try calisthenics, or they start right away with basic calisthenics exercises? Simple. Calisthenics. So here's another mistake that people often make when it comes to beginning is they will say, all right, I'm going to get into strength training or calisthenics, or I'm going to start doing this once I get whatever taken care of. Once I lose the weight, then I'm going to start to get stronger. Once I improve my endurance, then I'm going to start trying to get... No. Start. Just start. Just right now, go. All right. Obviously, you have to take things into consideration. Like, dude, I got a broken leg. I'm not going to take up running. Sure, obviously. However, don't think you have to qualify to begin training. That's the mindset that a lot of people get hung up on when they want to get stronger, build muscle or anything. That's like, okay, I can do that, but first I got to do this. I've got to make sure I get this thing taken care of. Chances are the thing that you're putting off is going to be a key component to getting what that is. Like for weight loss, few things will help you lose weight like getting stronger, right? You are building a bigger engine. Bigger engines burn more fuel, right? So in your goal, especially in the legs, the little secret for burning a lot more calories, make your legs as strong as possible. The stronger your legs are, the easier it will be to burn a lot more calories. Muscle is a very potent influence towards that. And I'm not talking about like muscle burns more calories than fat and all that sort of thing, because there's a lot of conflicting evidence to that. And some people are like, you burn, only 20 more calories a day if you add 10 pounds of muscle or whatever. But across the board, it doesn't really matter how or why it works. When you're stronger, it's easier to lose weight. Full stop. So start getting stronger today. You will not regret it. And I've never known anybody who was like, well, I would have lost more body fat, but damn it, I was just too strong. Never happens. It's always a very valuable asset. Sean asking, hey, Matt, how much do you think mobility plays a role in people trying to get strong with calisthenics? Very good. So here's another mistake that I used to make, was thinking that when it came to calisthenics, it's all about strength. I used to think like, oh, I don't care about mobility. I don't care about stability very much. Like, people all the time, they'll say this like, oh, the pistol squat, and they're wobbling all over that's a balance exercise. You're not going to get stronger from that sort of thing. This is a mindset from our bodybuilding-esque approach, using a lot of machines and stuff that allows us to take the body and break it up into fragmented pieces so we can focus on one little piece at a time. Now, not to say that's not beneficial, because sometimes you do want to focus and create an emphasis in one area or the other. But we have to remember that using the body is always a holistic approach. We cannot isolate strength or endurance or mobility or stability. We always have all of those things in play all the time. And a lot of people, when it comes to especially lower body calisthenics, their stability and their mobility will hold them back. Like, oh, this pistol squat, that's a stability exercise. Yeah, because your stability sucks, right? Or that's a mobility exercise. Yeah, because your mobility sucks, right? And then you avoid improving that thing and it holds you back. But when you improve your stability, when you improve your mobility, suddenly those exercises that allow you to further challenge your muscle and get stronger become much more available to you. So mobility is super important. Stability is super important. That's why those three things are integral in grind style calisthenics. In our warm-up, we specifically focus on those things. That way you're not being held back in your strength and hypertrophy training. Because if you don't make it a point to improve those things, you will be held back. And it doesn't make the exercise any more enjoyable too. You improve your stability and mobility and all that other sort of thing, exercise feels a hell of a lot more satisfying and rewarding. Fantastic. Dave asking, very good question. Speaking of stability, hey Matt, how do you know when you've activated deeper muscles like in the hips? Well, if you're asking, you're not. Remember that your muscle activation is sensual, right? So this is a sparkling water with mango and black tea. Now, if this didn't have a label on it, I drank it, but it tastes mango. Yeah, there's mango in there. There's black tea in there kind of thing, because I'm sensing it. My palate is sensing it, and we're using our sensory perception for this spring water. Same exact thing with muscle tension. You tense a muscle, you feel it, right? It can engage it and feel the muscle turning on. And if you're not getting that sensation, well, guess what? It's probably not turning on a whole heck of a lot. So that's why things like overcoming isometrics and stuff are so important. The tension phase of grind style calisthenics is so important, because the more you engage those things, the more you get good at engaging them, the more you're going to feel it. And the more you feel it, the more effective the exercise is going to be. DJ Ball's asking the general crowd here, but I'll field this one as well. Hey guys, what are your thoughts on kettlebell swings? I love kettlebell swings. I think that's one of the most effective ways to wake up the hips for a lot of people. And I think if you're going to engage in any sort of like ground-based exercise for weighted stuff, kettlebells are fantastic. I do highly recommend getting in-person coaching though for that one. And this is another mistake that a lot of beginners make, is they try to learn things a little, maybe too much now, through YouTube, through social media. They look up how to do kettlebell swings. Now, I got into kettlebell stuff back when Dragon Door was just starting to introduce kettlebells. I remember literally buying a 30-pound kettlebell, bringing it into the gym that I worked at the time, and just had it on the floor, and everybody's like, what the hell is that thing? Like, what is this? Is this like a door stopper or something? Like someone would pick it up and be like, oh my gosh, that's so heavy. Like they'd never seen one before. They're like, what, looking around it, like, what is that? What? I don't know what that is, kind of thing. And so I watched the videos on YouTube, how to do kettlebell swings and stuff like that. And for like a year or two, I did it that way. And then I went to a conference, a strength conference, Evan Esch's underground strength coach certification. Highly recommended it, and realized in about 5 minutes, I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. I was like, this is how I'm swinging. And he's like, yeah, you don't know how to swing a kettlebell at all, man. Like, no. I got to do it this way and that way and stuff. So highly recommend the kettlebell swing because that ability to hinge and explosively use the hip, that translates to everything. Running, cycling, squatting, lunging, jumping, hiking. I mean, it's just one of those things we all need more of, especially if you're athletic. And most of us have a very hard time doing it because our hips are just out to lunge. And kettlebell swings are a good way to go about that. So are bridges and so forth. It's not exclusive to kettlebells, but I highly recommend it for sure. And get some personalized coaching, and don't make it fancy. It doesn't need to be the 10,000 kettlebell swing challenge or anything like that. You do like 50 swings a day. That's going to make a big difference for you. It's one of those things of low cost, very high reward. So Marlon coming on asking about muscle soreness. How do I deal with muscle soreness? Parlaying this again, a big mistake beginners make is they correlate, similar to what I was talking about earlier with the muscle pump with a good workout, soreness with a good workout. And this is one of those things that I'm really starting to change my mind on, because I won't lie, it's satisfying to have a little soreness and be like, yeah, all right, quads are sore, abs are sore kind of thing. But muscle soreness is not nearly as correlated with an effective workout as we thought it was. I forget who said it, but it was so perfect. They said, think about it this way. You get sore from creating a novel stimulus to the body. In other words, just exposing it to something new. But you get results from a productive stimulus to the body. In other words, you're training your muscles in a more effective way. So generally with soreness, hopefully it's not too crippling, but you have inflammation in the muscle that's going on. A lot of people misunderstand it as lactic acid, but that's not true. It's inflammation. It's just no different than if you just hit it and you were swollen and stiff in the arm the next day. So moving is your thing. This is where that active recovery thing comes in. Trying to just move the muscle gently, higher repetition. So a lot of times I'll have people jump on some sort of like cardio if that's the case. They're like, my legs are so sore. I'm like, okay, let's jump on the rower or the exercise bike or something. For me personally, I've always noticed that if I go to Taekwondo with sore muscles, they're not sore so much after that, because I'm just moving my body in many different ways dynamically, but it's not against a lot of resistance. Movement is medicine, in other words, for what you're addressing with that. Khan, Mr. Khan, Osama Khan, coming on. Thank you very much. Do you think that media mention of sugar is poison or not? All foods are GMOs and will cause a variety of diseases is just fear mongering, as you mentioned, or is there some truth to that? So here's the thing that we want to recognize about media is that almost all of the stuff that's based on like fear and like, don't do this, you'll do that. It's always based on a shred of truth. It's almost always based on some aspect of science to some degree. So it's not like a total myth and don't just ignore it kind of thing. It almost always has something to it. But what ends up happening with data and information when it gets fed through a media filter is it gets blown way out of context and proportion. So things that are like, well, there could be a slight tiny chance of risk in certain circumstances and individuals, and we might want to just be mindful of it in certain populations, and more research is needed. That's what the science says. And then someone on Dr. Oz or someone writes a book going, it's going to kill you. It's going to take 10 years off your life. It's worse than cocaine. And it gets hyped up and blown up. So that's what media does. And most of our beliefs in fitness are not based on science and data. They're based on media because that's what we're exposed to. We get a million messages through advertising and media and stuff for every one message from just science and data. And usually we just ignore it because it's bland and it doesn't really mean much of anything. Because it's usually along the lines of, it's interesting, but we need more research. It could lead this way or that way, but we're not sure. We need more research. But then it gets through the media filter. It's like, cure for cancer found. It's the greatest, wonderful thing. If you're not doing this, you're going to like get cancer in 10 years or all these sorts of things. Always look at it, though, in the holistic, fundamental sense. Like the sugar thing. Like, is an overconsumption of sugar problematic? Absolutely. Are we generally eating too much of it? Absolutely. Is it a lot of hyper palatable foods, processed foods? Sure. So yeah, but do you really need another perspective telling you not to eat too much junk food? That a slice of chocolate cake probably isn't the best option for dinner, right? This is not stuff we need to be taught. But when you look at the role of sugar in just general human biology, it's not at all to that degree. Like, we all eat sugar. I don't care what diet you're on, you're eating sugar to some degree. And if it's not sugar, your body's going to make it sugar. When I was studying nutrition in college, hell, the first Nutrition 101 class, basically the big lesson in the entire class was, you will die if you don't have enough sugar in your system. And almost everything about your body's response to digestion is about keeping you in sugar. Sugar's keeping you alive because it's all what our brain floods on. And like the entire class, that was every lesson. Like, why do we have this enzyme? Why do we do this? Why does this digestion? What is the role of this? It's always, we need sugar. It's keeping you alive. That's the most important thing. We've evolved to be sugar-using beings. Doesn't mean you should be eating, like a lot of sugar in your diet and stuff, but it does mean that our understanding of it from a media perspective is blown way out of proportion and not at all correct. J-list. And so again, from the beginner's perspective, we typically fall more for that overhyped fear-mongering stuff. You can usually hear a lot of beginner talk when it's black and white. That's bad, that's good, this is great, this is awful kind of thing. The experts with the experience will be more of like, well, it's nuanced and it depends in certain circumstances and it's not quite that simple. That's expert talk. The simplistic, overly simplified is usually the mark of the beginner. Jay first. Hey, Matt, recently I started doing pull-ups with full retraction. Very good. Finally feeling the lats and lower back. It's amazing how that retraction gets those lats engaged. However, I feel like I'm doing a horizontal motion at the top. Thoughts? As you should be. Absolutely. Yes, you should feel like the top of the pull-up is almost like a row. Okay, so we think of pull-ups like vertical, like it's straight up kind of thing. But compound movements, particularly like pull-ups, dips, squats and stuff, they actually move our center of gravity slightly, or not the center of gravity, but our torso rather, in a slightly curved motion. So when we do a pull-up, we don't come up like this. We actually come up and in and down and forward. Up and it's very slight. It's not a big pronounced thing, but it's not straight up. It's up and in and then down and forward and up and in and down and forward. That's going to be a hell of a lot easier on your joints. You're going to get your lats a lot more. But yeah, it is a bit of a row at the top. And consequently, that also leads into the muscle up. Because if you look at a muscle up, because dips are down and forward, then up and back. So muscle ups are actually up and forward, and then you continue into the dip. So it's a subtle snaking S motion as you go up. So yeah, that row, that's exactly what you should be doing. And Dave is saying, take that back, chocolate cake is an excellent dinner. Well, here's the thing, is it's an excellent way to start dinner. I like, sometimes I'll have a bit of sweet, especially if it's been a long day without food and stuff like that. But I can't do, like, I don't know, I grew up in a time when my mother would make cupcakes when I was a kid. It would be like you'd have the cupcake and you would have the slightest smear of frosting on the top, right? And now I go and people are like, cupcakes, and it's like that much frosting on it. I can't do with that, all that frosting. It seems to be with cakes in general, way too much frosting, way too much. The frosting to cake ratio is all off. You know, basically I would have basically 99% cake, 1% frosting, if that. I'm not a big frosting fan. Excuse me. Raquel, hey Matt, I gave my girlfriend the combat conditioning and she started to train. Yay! But I don't know why she feels pain in the lumbar zone after doing one step of squats. It's not pain from nerves though, not muscle. It might be the psoas. I would bet money it's the psoas. Her psoas is engaging and pulling on her lower back, because the psoas is a bit of a hip flexor, which engages as we go down into squats. So I would look at her ab activation during the squats and hip activation. Make sure she's practicing those bridges. Glutes and abs, they help to balance out the forces in the lumbar region. And so that psoas should be working for sure. I'm not saying, you know, take the psoas out of it, but I would bet money that's working and the other things are not engaging to balance that on out. Try keeping with that one. Yeah, I think that will help. Thank you very much for donations, folks. I forgot I put that donation box on there, because some people, they ask, like, how can I support RDP and stuff? And I always just like share the videos and stuff, but a couple of donations coming in. Thank you so very much, folks. It is very much appreciated. Let's continue here. Eddie's coming on. Brockingham. Just wondering if it's the same with salt, that the body needs salt, and if you don't have enough salt, we'll create salt that you need. Yes, sort of. It is the same with salt. You do need salt. It is an electrolyte. A lot of, believe it or not, our caloric energy is all about maintaining that sodium-potassium balance throughout our nervous system. But as far as I know, your body cannot make salt. Your body can make sugar from fats and protein, gluconeogenesis and stuff. But as far as I know, salt is one of those minerals you got to have it to some degree, and in the diet and stuff. So again, not saying you need to pour salt on everything and need to be eating a lot of salt, but it is something that we want to make sure we are getting something of. And particularly if you're in a hot climate, you're sweating a lot. Endurance athletes like us bikers and stuff, we need to be aware of our sodium and potassium levels. I used to have terrible cramping, especially in long races. I did a race several years called the Vermont 50. It was 50 miles. And man, I had a cramp in my hamstring. I never felt pain like that. It felt like my hamstring was just ripping right off the bone. It was terrible. And the only way I could get it to go is they had these electrolyte pills, and they also had this electrolyte solution called Heed. It looked like head, but it was actually pronounced Heed. And I took, they were like one electrolyte pill an hour kind of thing. I took 5 of those pills and 3 water bottles of that Heed in the course of 2 minutes. And that finally regulated my system. So yeah, salt is very good. We typically don't need to add any to the diet because processed foods typically have a lot of sodium already added to it. So it's usually not an issue, but in some cases it is something just to be a little bit mindful of. Same with sugar. Typically don't need it. You don't need to add any more of it, but some cases it is something that you do want to be somewhat mindful of. Sean W., what's the chances be able to do live following along workouts? It's a very good question. To be honest with you, I never was very good at that sort of thing because I just don't have very good coordination for exercise and instruction at the same time. So one of the gyms that I used to work at, we had a lot of exercise classes, and I would teach these classes sometimes. They think like, step aerobics, body pump, that sort of thing. So what I would always have to do is show the exercise, like, okay, everybody do it this way and go. And then I would like go around and coaching people and stuff like that. And a lot of the instructors that we would hire, that would be their workout. They'd be like, I'm getting paid to work out, so everybody do your squats. Okay, here we go, squats kind of thing. I could never do that, because to work out at the intensity that I want to work out at, that I would be working out at, I wouldn't have the energy or attention to coach. There's just no way. I could do it one or the other. If I'm trying to split it, it's going to be compromised. So that's why I've always had a hard time with that. Just never could do that sort of thing. But it's something I could look into for sure. Maybe just posting a couple of videos on online of next year, because right now the Grind Style Calisthenics workout program is in PDF form, and I make videos introducing it and stuff like that. And at the end of next month, that'll be the entire program, the year-long program. The entire Grind Style Calisthenics program will be available for you 100% free through the YouTube channel here. So maybe next year, the project would be to take those workouts, because it just repeats every year, and put the workouts on video. That's a really good idea. I'm glad you're here to tell me these things. Fantastic. And Does Dangerous. I like that motorcycle there. How I end up here, I was trying to find the side plank world record. I could do 4 minutes. 4 minutes, very impressive. Side planks, very good. Outstanding exercise. I've been getting more into those myself as well. Very good. Let's see, what else can I help you with? Let me see, what are some of the other mistakes that I find people have made over the years. Let's see, paralysis by analysis is another one. That's a big mistake. And I think this is partially a symptom of our information society that we have. We got the worlds of human knowledge in literally the palm of our hands with our phones and our computers and stuff like that. And I think we've gotten a little too much invested in the idea that knowledge equals power. So just as we think hard work produces results, which isn't always true, we also think knowledge and information is going to give us what we need. But the fact of the matter is, we've got so much information now that it oftentimes conflicts, and we just get more confused. And so what we want, particularly as beginners in anything, is we want certainty. We want to know for sure what we should be doing. But the problem is, as beginners, there's no way you can know what you should be doing. No one's going to know that answer for you, because you're starting off with too much of an empty canvas. It's like having that canvas and be like, what is this painting? And you're like, you've drawn a line with a circle. That could be anything. It could be a cow. It could be an abstract. It could be anything, right? We don't have enough experience to know what you really should be doing. So we go online and we ask the internet, what should I do? How many push-ups should I do? Should I eat this type of diet or that diet? And of course, you're going to get opinions, because we all have opinions. But that's the problem, is they're all opinions. They're not based on anything, because they don't know you. You don't even know what you should be doing. How in the world are strangers on the internet supposed to know what you should be doing? But again, going through that media filter, you get a lot of fear mongering. You also get a lot of utopian thinking, like, oh, you do this, it's going to be the greatest thing in the world. Or you do this, it's going to be the worst thing in the world, kind of thing. And reality is, it's probably going to be okay, maybe pretty good, and maybe not the best thing to do, but don't worry about it. It's all getting blown way out of proportion. And that bounces us back and forth. Like, this person says, don't ever do this. And this person says, you have to do this. And we get nowhere. So the mistake we make is trying to outlearn our paralysis by analysis, when in reality, what you should be doing is just taking more action. 90% of what you really need to know of what's going to work best for you isn't going to come from the internet. It's going to come from your experience. It's going to come from rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty, and going out there. Are you going to make mistakes? Absolutely. Are you going to hit some dead ends? For sure. Are you going to be able to avoid that by learning something on the internet? Not a chance in hell. Bad things are going to happen. I'm saying relatively bad things. You're going to have those negative things happen, but you're going to learn a lot more by hitting them quick and then moving beyond them. And it doesn't mean don't use the internet. Please watch my YouTube videos, of course. but go to the internet with a specific question or a problem to solve. Don't just go there looking for any old information that's just going to lead you down a million rabbit holes that go absolutely nowhere. FC asking, what's a very good question, best way to increase pull-ups without losing body weight? Because that is one of the best ways to do this sort of thing. I was talking with my boss, who is actually one of the best mountain bikers in the country. And he put it to me flat. He's like, Matt, you'd be a hell of a lot faster if you didn't have that extra 30 pounds of muscle on your frame. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's like, at the end of the day, just losing extra body weight is one of the best ways to get faster. I'm like, I know. It's a compromise that I am willing to make. And that's another thing too, is we want it all as beginners. We don't want to compromise. We want the program that builds every aspect of fitness 100%. I want to be able to win marathons and powerlifting meets and be explosive and be a world-class bowler and 100 other things. But the fact is, the more you get dialed into what you specifically want and the direction you want to go, the more you're going to have to compromise other things. And again, the media filter out there is going to tell you, you can't compromise that. No, you have to be able to have ultimate flexibility or the endurance to run a marathon, or else you're always going to have people saying that your choices are wrong to some degree, because that's their priorities. There are plenty of people out there who criticize me because I don't do muscle ups. They're just not in my repertoire. You know, every once in a while, like, I wonder if I could do a muscle up, and I'll just struggle through a few. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, I just don't care. They're not a priority to me. And if they're not a priority to me, they're not important, full stop. But if they are to you, then that's a different story. You should be making them a regular part of your routine. But don't let other people try to put their priorities on you. Because if it's not important to you, it's not important. It's just that simple. People are like, but you're not in shape if you can't do this. Fine, I'm not in shape for that, right? I'd be a terrible triathlete because I can't swim for crap and I run horribly. I'm a good biker though, but I can't run or swim. But so if I wanted to be a triathlete, then that would be a problem. But I don't have any interest in it, so it's not. Let's see. What else can we do here? Oh man, it's an hour 6. This always goes by so flippin' quick. So quick. One more here. Does Dangerous One's asking, I do handstand push-ups and Y side plank, dragon plank for abs, wide pull-ups, 200 calf raise, 200 squats. Very good. I would say look at the 200 calf raises, 200 squats. Something about that's a little off to me. Look into the progressive nature of squats. 200, that's a fun thing about squats. Like, you ever do the 5-minute squat challenge? That'll turn your legs to lead real quick. Don't neglect the higher advanced things like shrimp squats in the grind style calisthenics program. Dieter asking, are Russian dips the best transition exercise for bar muscle ups? They're a very good exercise for that. Absolutely. I'm a much more bigger fan though of like ring dips, just because when trying to get that transition, because that's what muscle ups really train. They don't train pull-ups or dips. They train the transition between pull-ups and dips, because that's the hard part for a lot of people, is getting that extra inch down below. So ring dips I like, because you can get yourself even lower towards in between your hands, because there's not a bar that's kind of holding you back there. So that's what I would more put a priority to. But anyway, folks, I am burning daylight. I've got a Yeti mountain bike that is screaming to go out for a ride, and I don't want to restrict that at all or deny. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming on. We'll be talking again next week, probably the same time-ish, 2:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time here on the Red Delta Project YouTube channel. If you have any requests or questions, you can further hit me up, DM me on Instagram at red.delta.project. It's a good place to do that. Thank you so much, everybody, for the support. Don't forget, down below is the links to all of the resources that I mentioned, including the full library, as well as the NOSC affordable suspension straps and Duonomic doorway pull-up handles. I will talk to you folks next week. Till then, be fit and live free.